Hey everybody, welcome back to Tech Talk Education. This is Dr. Heldman. I want to run you through some more PowerShell, and today we're going to talk about how to create custom objects. So these are really good for things like organizing data, creating custom outputs, for scripting automation, for example, if you are working with an application programmer interface, things like that. Now the thing to be aware of is that PowerShell is more than like a command line tool. Everything that PowerShell works with is considered to be an object. So learning how to create objects and manage them is very key to what we know about how to work PowerShell. So let's get started. This should be super informative. So why do we want to create custom objects? Well, they're useful for organizing data, for creating custom outputs, for getting API data from an API, things like that. So it's good to be able to formulate a custom object. Now we can do this, you can find out what the objects have just by querying what's in the buffer right now with all the objects. So we can type in get process. This can also be called a proc. I'm going to put in a pipe key. The pipe character is an uppercase backslash on your keyboard. And then we're going to say select object. Now all we're doing here is we're saying that we want you to show us the very first object that's in the queue or that's in the list. And we're going to say first one. And what PowerShell will do is output a process name called AAKORE. Shows you how many handles it has and gives you some information. So the idea is we're talking about PowerShell processes that are in play right now that are running, and that's just an idea to show you that we have these different objects out there. Well, what would happen if we wanted to create a custom object? So here's how we're going to do that. We're going to use the PowerShell PS custom object name nomenclature, and I'm going to say that I've got a student. So we'll just keep using students because that's a really good way to do it. We think about students in a class or whatever. And I'm going to invoke PS custom object like this in left and right square brackets. Now again, you don't need to worry about the case sensitivity. It's not a big thing. I'm just doing it just so you get accustomed to how these things are worded in PowerShell. The next thing we do is we put in an @ and a curly brace. @ curly. Now we can give it the data that we want to give it. And by the way, I like putting a space in here. White space is not going to interrupt this command, and it makes it easier for you to read if there's white space in between the starting curly, the ending curly. You can see clearly where things are delineated. So I'm going to put in that my name is Tick John, semicolon. His age is going to be equal to 18, semicolon. And the course that he's going to be going through is computer science. Tick, computer science. Tick. And then we'll close that off with an ending curly. So take a look at the nomenclature. You're declaring a variable called student. It's going to contain a custom object, which is going to consist of a hash table that consists of the key name, value John, key age, value 18, key course, value computer science. Let's see if that works. Boom, we like that. We don't get any red back from PowerShell telling us everything's groovy. Now all we have to do is tell it to print out student, and we've got it. But what happens if we want to get a little bit more complicated than this? You're going to have some sort of an editing tool to be able to do some of this work that we're going to do now. So we're going to go and we're going to make a bigger list, but we're going to turn this into a script. So what I like to do, I like the tool. It's called, let me see if I can get it to come up here. It's called Notepad++. So it looks like this. It's got a little notepad here. It's called Notepad++. And I like the tool a lot. So what I've done, I've brought the font size way up so you can see it. But it's just like a text editor, but it allows you to do a couple of things that are kind of cool. First of all, it allows you to have multiple files in multiple tabs at the top here. And then it also allows you to select the programming language that you're going to use. Notepad++ is a free download for you. Love it. It's a great text editor. And so what I'm going to do is go over here to the Language tab, navigate down to P, and select PowerShell for the language that I want to use. And it knows about dozens of languages. It's very good. Now the next thing that we want to do is we want to come in here and create a little bit bigger thing. So we want to create a hash table that has a couple of entries in it, and we want to begin to write a script to do this. Now if you notice here at the top in the tab here, I've named this thing myscript.ps1, and it's in :PowerShell objects, myscript.ps1. And that's where we're going to put it. And so the way to get where you need to go, let me show you how we did that. I'll show you how I got to where I got to. So I'm going to clear the screen. I'm going to go to C:\/system\Windows 32. Excuse me, C:\/Windows\System32. This by default is where PowerShell lands. It is adjustable. It's not within the scope of what we're trying to talk about today. Just so you know, it lands on C:\Windows_System32 or wherever Windows is installed in the System32 folder. However, I want to go to the D drive and I want to go to PowerShell objects here. The way that I got that was I made a directory called PowerShell objects like that. And it's not case sensitive. Now that I have that folder, I change into a CD space PowerShell objects, and my prompt will change. I'll clear the screen. There we are. Okay, so now we've got two things open. We've got PowerShell open, and we've got Notepad++ open. I'm going to go back to Notepad++, and here we are. Now the first thing you should know is that when you're writing a shell script like this, like you're writing a PowerShell script, you can use comments. So the hashtag is generally speaking the universal symbol for a one-line comment. It's not the same in some languages, but for the most part, a hashtag will get you by, especially in these scripting languages. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say that this will a script to show multiple students, like that. So, and you can see that Notepad++ codes this in green, so we know it's a string. It's very common. It'll use green for strings. Now we can declare a new variable. So we're going to declare a variable called students, plural. And we're going to set that equal to @left parentheses, @left parentheses. Now since you're writing a script, you can come down a line. You don't have to do everything on a single line like you would be forced to do if you were in the native PowerPoint executable. So I'll just hit enter. You can even tab in, that's totally fine, to make it more readable. And now we're going to invoke PS custom object, like that, right square brackets. Now I've got the font adjusted a little bit, but for some reason Notepad++ wants to go with its default size when it's showing me those left and right curly square brackets, and that's fine. It should change for me. And then we put in an @left curly, and now we want to key in our first record. So our first record is going to be my name is going to be equal to Alice, semicolon. My age is going to be equal to 19, semicolon. Notice here that this is a string. It's in between ticks, and this is an integer, and it doesn't need ticks. So the system is thinking of this as an actual integer value. An integer is anything that doesn't have the decimal fractional part. So you could do birthday logic, numeric logic with this, for example. And then we're going to say that the chorus is going to be equal to math. All right. Now we close this off with a right curly and a comma, and we come down a line. So that's our first line. What we can do is copy this line. So I'll just take and grab all this, Control-C to copy, Control-V to paste. Makes it much easier, and now I can change the name and stuff. So let's put in another name. So here I've got the name Bob, and Bob is 20, and Bob is studying history, like this. Okay, so we've got that. We do not put an ending comma on the end of the last record. So the very last record doesn't get a comma. Each record, starting with the first and thereafter until the last, does get a comma. And now we'll put in our right parentheses. And what that does is closes that all off. So it's easy to read this now. It's easy to write the scripting language using something like Notepad++. I want to talk to you about the ISE later. There is a scripting tool that comes with PowerShell called ISE Interactive Script Editor, and we'll do a movie on that later on. But for now, download Notepad++ and fire away. You're going to love the product. The product is like Windows Notepad, only on steroids. It's very good, and you can even run some things inside Notepad++ using the Run button. So you can run things like testing a web page and things like that, but it's not going to natively run certain things like C++ or things like that. It's not going to do that. It's not a compiler. It's not an IDE. It's just a script, an editor for scripts and things like that. Okay, now we're going to put in a for loop. And we've done this before, but what we do is we say for each. And you see it turns blue, so Notepad++ knows that this is a PowerShell command. And we're going to give it the list of things that we want it to write. So we want it to take the student variable, which we've already keyed in. We keyed that in at the command line, remember? And then we're going to say for some student in students, plural. For some student in students, plural, left and right curlies. And I'm going to begin to bring this curly down here, just like that, so it looks a little bit better. This is very much a Python syntax thing, and I like it a lot. So you're taking something singular, and you're putting it into something plural. So this students table here, this student hash table, has 2 entries in it. You're saying for each student inside students, we can go ahead and do something. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to write the output, and the output that we're going to write output is going to be this. We're going to put in tick left parentheses $. So it's very weird. We're saying we've got $, left parentheses $, student dot name, like that, and it sees that sitting out there. And we put a right parenthesis on there. Now what we've done is we have bundled this together. You'll see it in just a minute. Is taking, and we do it again, left $, left parentheses $, student dot course. And it sees it again. It knows that course exists out there. Right parens, tick. Now take a look at what the output looks like here for you. So if your script is right, and this is where you're going to have a lot of your battles, you're going to have syntax problems and whatever, and you're going to have to wind up Googling things and using ChatGPT or whatever to figure out where things have gone wrong at. A lot of the stuff that you'll read, especially like on ChatGPT, will show a comma here. And I think PowerShell would like to see a semicolon, but if a comma works for you, that's great. I got into trouble with double quotes, so I wound up putting everything in ticks, which seems to work okay. And what you're doing here now is you're telling it that you've got a student here. That variable exists already, so I hope this works. Go grab a student in students, each one of these things. So it's going to iterate through here, and it's going to declare a variable called $student. Each one of these guys is a student. And then you say in students, and we're going to output the student name and the student course. So we've got that. So I think I'm going down the wrong rabbit trail a little bit for you. When I say that we have a student already keyed in, what we're doing is we're saving each one of these as a single student, and we're calling it $student. So we're saying go into student, into the students table, grab a student, and output its name and its course number. And we're just using variables to do this work. Now I'm going to save this off as myscript.ps1. Okay, now this script is going to fail because you don't have execution rights for it. So let me show you what we're going to do there. Okay, now we're back in PowerShell, and this thing is likely to fail for you. And so what we want to do is we want to run it. I want to make sure that it's out there already. So I'm going to do a directory on star.ps1. You're going to save the file off with a ps1 extension. And so I've worked on this. I wrote to it at 1 p.m. and it's called MyScript PS1. Now let me show you the syntax we're going to have to use to do that, because what will happen is it is going to give you an error if you don't execute this correctly. You've got to tell it that you want to use it in such a way that it is executable for you. I'm going to hit my up arrow and show you that command. So I'm going to go back. I've been doing a lot of experimenting around with this, so you can see everything I've been doing. And we need this thing here. So what we're doing is we're saying, hey, PowerShell exe, we're going to change the execution policy. So to get this thing to run, you have to change the execution policy on it, because Microsoft by default has these PowerShell scripts unable to execute. And so we've got a custom script here. We want to be able to execute this thing. And so now what we're going to do is we have to tell it, well, go ahead and don't apply the execution policy to this file right here. So you tell it that you want to bypass the execution policy. You put in tac file, and I want you to notice here /. So this is saying the file that's here in the local folder right here, myscript.ps1, I can see it locally right here. And what I'm saying is bypass the execution policy on this file /myscript.ps1. Now the // means I am in the same folder as myscript.ps1, and so we're telling it right here, right in this folder. It's weird nomenclature. This is very Linux-like, and so we hit enter. Come over here, click an insertion point, and hit enter. Boom, and there it goes. Now we've got some problems here. So now we have to go back and we have to edit our script, because it's not printing stuff out the way that we'd like it to print out. So I got into the weeds with a command that I executed, and it gave me some errors, and I had to go look them up. Now PowerShell shows this in red. I'm red-green colorblind, so this is very difficult for me to see up here. And it is possible for you to edit these things to get a different colors and fonts and things like that. It's telling me that at line 8, character 15, it found a problem. And the problem was it didn't like this double quote when combined with this tick here. And then here I ran it again, and it's, oh, I'm missing a terminator. At line 7, character 33, it needed something there, missing a closing right curly. So I went back in and adjusted the script. Let me show that to you. So there it is right there. And take a look what I've got now. So this actually works. It's fine. What I did was I went and changed everything to ticks. I made sure that things were either ticks or double quotes. And the double quotes do seem to work here. So here I put in double quotes and double quotes. And I don't know, let's try it and see if the tick works instead. So I'll put in a tick here. And the only thing you've got to be consistent about is you have to have beginning and ending ticks, or beginning and ending double quotes. And you can see here it says student name is taking student course. Well, let's see if this prints out. So I click that, I go hit the up arrow and rerun this thing, and it prints out that. So that's an error. I don't want it to print out the actual code. What I want it to do is print out the names. So, and what I'm going to do now is put in double quotes here, like here and here, and save this thing, and then run it again. Up arrow, boom. Now it runs just fine. Note to self. So you can get away with quotes sometimes, you can get away with ticks sometimes. The trick here is that you want to make sure equation match. So here we're putting a string inside ticks. The course is inside ticks. Double quotes would work as well, but I'm going to live with ticks. These are inside ticks. This guy will not print unless it's in double quotes, and I think it's because we're doing a process called concatenation. And what concatenate means is, first of all, we're telling it to go into the variable student and find the name. Then print out this string is taking, then go into student and find the course, and the entire thing goes inside a $sign here, making it a variable that we can print out. And that works just fine. So there's a lot that you have to do to make sure that things are working correctly. The main point of this lesson was to teach you about PS custom objects. So this is very useful for creating reports and things like that. You have to remember the @ curly. They have to go together. It will error out, I believe. If you do not, if you put a space in here, let's try it. Let's see if it errors out. And we'll run this thing. Yeah, it took it just fine, so that's okay. So it seems like it does like the... So to give yourself a little more breathing room here, you could put the white space in here so you could read it. You need to remember there's a comma after each row with the exception of the last row, and everything is enclosed inside left and right curly braces. So there's a lot to think about here. You could miss an out sign, you could miss a % sign, something like that. And then this is declaring a custom object that consists of a hash table with a key of name, age, and course, values of Alice, 19, and math. And it repeats, it does it again. Then what this part is doing is it's iterating through each one of these rows here. I call them rows because I've worked with databases so long. So it's going to iterate through each of these rows here, print out the name, and print out the course. Save this and up arrow and run it. I'll clear the screen so you can see it better. Up arrow, boom, and it runs just fine. So the long and short of this is that we are now in a position where we have to use some sort of a scripting tool. You could use Visual Studio Code. That will do it for you. I like Notepad++. That'll do it for you. We can use the PowerShell ISE. That will do it for you as well. Now there's one more thing I'd like to show you. Suppose that you wanted to export the results of this to a comma delimited file that you could pull up in Excel or Google Sheets or something like that, or Word. Word will open up CSVs as well. They're called comma separated values. It's a .csv file, a comma separated value, and the idea is that it takes the data and it separates them with a comma. So in this case, it would take the data in the first row here, and it would take Alice, comma 19, comma math. Next row, Bob, comma 20, comma history. It is possible to get PowerShell to do that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to say in students, what I want you to do, pipe, is export. It's called export CSV. And we're going to export it, and you have to tell it the path. So tag path is going to be students.csv. So what you're doing here is you have the ability to path this thing out to a place where you want to save this. I suppose it could even be on a network share using NetBIOS or something like that. And this is going to be a comma delimited file, so other people can pull this up and read it using common tools like an Excel or Google Sheets. And then we put on tag no type information. And I assume this is keeping the metadata off of this particular file. And we click Save. Because I'm in Notepad++, I have to save the changes before I can execute this. Go in here and execute the script. So I hit my up arrow right here and hit Enter. Boom. It prints out the text that I wanted it to print out. But if I come in here and do a dir, or I could do an ls, either way will work. If I do an ls, I can see the student's CSV is out there. So it did write that just fine. Now here's the question. Can I use the Linux cat statement, cat students.csv? Yes, I can. So there you can see what the CSV looks like, and they're all separated out with double quotes. Also, instead of cat, I wonder if I could say old Windows command prompt command is type students.csv. They both work just fine. So PowerShell is really good because it has incorporated a lot of Linux-like structures into it. It can use the old DOS command shell commands. It can use quite a few Linux commands. You'll run into areas where maybe it doesn't know a command. And then what we have done now, and let me show you the bin again, created a script using PS custom object, PowerShell custom object, which is dynamically creating a row here that consists of a student's name, age, and study, or his topic, and another student's name, age, and topic. We wrote out the name of the topic, and then we exported it to a CSV. So that, my friends, is how you use PS custom object. So I hope this has been helpful. I can tell you that sometimes PowerShell can be doing something and you're like, I don't understand what it's asking for here. And one of the big things, if I got into trouble, I would play around with these ticks versus the double quotes. It seems to me like there are areas when that works fine. There are areas where the tick works fine. You cannot have a double quote here and a tick here. You'll never be able to get away with that. But as long as you're consistent. And then what I would look for is, does it look the way it's supposed to look? Like you need an at curly right here. Well, this is at left parentheses, right parentheses, at curly, ending curly right here. That idea. That's what you're looking for. You want to make sure that everything is syntactically correct. And the PowerShell error generator is really good about telling you where things are at. So you get some really good debug information, just figuring out where it's finding a problem at, and then what you're going to have to do is play around with it. We also talked about Notepad++, which I like a lot. You can use Visual Studio Code. It's a free download for you. It'll work just fine. Or you could use the PowerShell ISE. All of these will work. Well, I hope you enjoyed this. If you're enjoying these videos, I would love it if you would like and share and subscribe. You can leave comments. I love that. Get your friends to join. I am trying to build the channel. And you know what? I wish you happy holidays, and we'll talk to you in the next video.